President Biden's poll numbers continue to sink. According to The Hill and Decision Desk HQ, Donald Trump is trouncing Biden 59.3% to 40.8%. The most recent New York Times Siena College poll found that Trump was leading Biden by 6 percentage points, 49% to 43%. Biden's dwindling poll numbers beg the question, do people even like Joe Biden? According to a 538 tracker, we don't quite know how well-liked or unliked he is, but we do know he's deeply unpopular. A majority of voters polled, 57.2% to be exact, they disapprove of the president, while 37.1% approve.
Deep reservations about Biden are trickling in from all corners. A group of business executives penned a letter to Biden urging him to pass the torch, writing, quote, "We believe that nothing short of American democracy is at stake this November, and we are at risk of a devastating loss," the letter reads. Filmmaker Rob Reiner did not mince words, posting, quote, "It's time to stop effing around. If the convicted felon wins, we lose our democracy. Joe Biden has effectively served the U.S. with honor, decency, and dignity. It's time for Joe Biden to step down." Literary legend Stephen King posted, quote, "Joe Biden has been a fine president, but it's time for him, in the interests of the America he so clearly loves, to announce he will not run for re-election." And so while a lot of people have talked about this based on vibes, based on the debate performance, the data really doesn't lie. And as much as we can talk about how old Joe is and how hard that was to watch, the reality is he's not looking like the candidate that can win in November. And the fact that Democrats are dealing with that data and slowly saying it's time for you to step down, Joe, but Joe won't look at that data, it seems like he's surrounded by a bunch of yes men that want to ignore the numbers, which don't lie, Robbie.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The numbers look horrible for Joe Biden. As far as we can tell, he just doesn't believe them. That's what we hear from political reporters who speak to members of his inner circle. His view is that everybody's been wrong about him time and time again, that he's been counted out before, and he always, proves everybody wrong. And he can point to the 2022 midterms when it was expected that Republicans were going to have a red wave and Democrats had a better than expected result. He can point to his win in 2020. However, I was seeing a CNN clip with their pollster going into it, tackling the notion that the polls have underestimated Joe Biden in the past. If you actually look at the 2020 general election polling, the polls, if anything, overstated Biden's chances. You have to remember that in 2020, Donald Trump was the incumbent. Trump was down against Biden basically the entire time. Sometimes he was behind Joe Biden as much as 8 points. In the end, he ended up losing to Biden by about 4 points. In many of the polls throughout the race actually had Biden beating Trump by even more. So the fact that right now Trump is massively up against Biden, if we're talking about the polls, whether they're getting things right, it is perfectly plausible. In fact, it might be the more plausible thing to expect that the polls are overestimating Joe Biden's chances right now. Right now, these poll results might be looking more favorable for Joe Biden than would be the results on Election Day. And that's especially true if the concerns about age are only going to get more palpable as we see more of Joe Biden, his performance in the upcoming debate. He's supposed to be on the campaign trail. We also should keep in mind right now in the swing states, very little advertising money is being spent by Trump, by Republicans, to talk about Joe Biden. They have yet to really get out their persuasion campaign on the airways. That has not landed yet. And if that's going to have, you'd have to be naive to think that will have no effect. That is at least going to have a mildly in Trump's favor effect. Whereas on the other side, it's just not true. There's been nothing but criticism of Trump emanating from all corners of the Democratic media, it's never stopped. It's never ended. It's never gone away for 1 second in the last 8 years.
To say he's been written off throughout his life. You were a U.S. Senator for decades. You were on the Democratic presidential debate stage for the primaries a handful of times. You were the vice president. No one's written Joe Biden off. And his response about this, it's like, very bad for our prospects of his real cognitive state, because does that mean he forgot his decades in the Senate and his time as vice president? Very concerning stuff coming from Joe Biden. And also the response to double down and say, I am the president of the United States. He tweeted this from the official account. Let me be clear that I am the president of the United States right now, and I will run until the end. It's begging for respect. I think anyone who has to remind people they're the president is in an abysmal state in their presidential campaign as an incumbent. And to tweet something like that, it's like him saying, I'm the president. Jamie Harrison says it's my turn with the White House, you guys. Stop trying to take it away. And to address the claims about cognitive decline by saying, well, I've just got to go to bed sooner at 8 p.m. That doesn't make us feel better. What about all of the other countries that are a national security threat? Now they know the commander-in-chief is in bed after 8 p.m. Eastern time. That doesn't make us feel better. And so his response has definitely made his situation worse than if he just said, I had a bad debate, I understand your concerns, and we're looking at all of our options, and we're ensuring that we run the strongest campaign possible. That's it. You don't address it any further. But I think it's at the point where he can't ignore it. And so we're getting the real Joe Biden's response, and it's concerning that his ego is leading the way in the White House.
We were making Star Wars parallels earlier in the show. I saw this parallel is not unique to me. I saw this from I think it's Socialist Sopranos memes or something on Twitter. It's a great account. There's parallels to Junior Soprano, the aging mob boss on The Sopranos, which is one of my favorite television shows of all time. As an Italian Catholic American, it resonates with me. And Tony Soprano says, if you have to keep saying you're the boss over and over again, you're not really the boss. And actually, Junior Soprano in that show is the old man who's in charge, who's ostensibly in charge, but Tony's running everything behind the scenes, does suffer cognitive decline over the course of the show and ends up very confused and disoriented and still nominally in charge, but actually has no idea what's going on and even forgets that he's involved in the mob. Sorry, spoilers for if anyone is still waiting to watch this 20-year-old show. If you haven't seen it, it's great. You should watch it. But anyway, yeah, you're exactly right that, just insisting, I'm the guy in charge, I'm the guy in charge. You have to demonstrate that you're in charge by either delivering substantively on the policies you promised. And there was already, before the age stuff, there was already tremendous frustration from the people he needs to show up to vote for him, from Democrats, from the left, as you talk about with his Middle East policy and with his failed promises on student loans and other issues, policies I don't agree with and wouldn't want him to deliver on, which I'm not a supporter of them or a supporter of his, but things he certainly promised to his base to get them energized, to persuade them that he should be the guy at the top of the ticket, and he's not delivered on that at all. But if it's not him, it's going to be Kamala Harris in all likelihood. I think the idea of it being anyone other than Biden or Kamala is becoming more and more of a fantasy. CNN did run some of that polling on Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, et cetera, and they're just not that politically well known at this point, especially Gretchen Whitmer. The idea that those people, they might very well do better than Biden, but it seems unlikely for Harris to be passed over. She did have a favorable showing in that poll, the CNN poll from last week, showing her faring better against Trump, still losing, but doing better against Trump than Joe Biden. So that's the case right there, but it's a case that has to persuade Joe Biden, and I just don't see that happening.
Right. And you and I were joking around with Niall. I said, I think that maybe Biden is trying to run again because he just really wants to make good on those campaign promises he didn't get around to. He really just wants to cancel my student loan debt. Yeah. That would have been a better message, honestly, Robbie, if they were like, well, we need a majority in the House and the Senate so we can really get some stuff done. Everybody turn out and vote. That's what we've got to do. We're not even getting that from the Democrats. They're just like, please get Trump out. We are just check the box, who is not Donald Trump. And so many people are fine with that. I'm not fine with that. Anyone that has family that struggles paycheck to paycheck is not fine with that. And so Kamala Harris might be the alternative. And it kind of carries on with our Star Wars analogy here, because if Biden doesn't pave the way for a Kamala Harris presidency and promote her to be a master on the Jedi Council as Yoda, she might turn into Darth Harris. and it might be worse than what we faced with John Wadden.
I'm
So
loving
I think,
this.
this is also a point of power. If he lets other people replace him with a coup, how will he look then? What will his legacy be then? There's some kind of position of power in ushering in the next generation of leadership.
Faith in your new apprentice, misplaced, I believe, as Yoda says at one point, as is your faith in the dark side. We will be continuing to examine the Biden dilemma from all angles. Stay tuned, more Rising right after this.